love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire and darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me.
All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
You are making all things new. You are. You are making all things new. You are. You are making all things new. You are.
You are making all things new. You are. You are making all things new. You are. You are making all things new. You are.
There will come a day when you'll end our pain. We'll be home with day we wait, when we see your face. You are making all things new. You are making all things new. You are making all things new. You are. And there will come a day when you'll end our pain. We'll be home with you. Injustice will cease. You will be our peace. You make all things new. You will wipe our tears, erase all our fears. We'll be home with you. Wars will be no more. Death will lose its sting. You make all things new. Until that day we wait, and when we'll see your face, and for that day we wait, when we'll see your face. You are making all things new. 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 You are.
Hi 168 kids, I'm Liz Fisher and I am so glad you could join us today. First, I'm so glad to be back here at Springbrook, our sending church. Even as we learn the lesson today, I am so grateful that our church has so many faithful friends who help and support us along the way. Second, I want to wish you a big old Happy New Year. I absolutely love New Year's, and you want to know why? It's because I love to look back over the last year of my life and think about all the things that happened during that time. This past year was a pretty big year for me and my family. We moved into a new house and a new neighborhood. We got to go camping with some of our friends. We spent the night in Chicago as a family, and we got to host Thanksgiving at our house for the first time ever. Now, I would love for you to stop, think about, and say some of the good things that happened this past year with your family. If you want, you can even shout them at me. I'm listening. Wow, you thought of some really great things. Now, I know that not everything that happened in the last year was good, and sometimes we spend a lot of time being sad, and that is okay to feel too. But when we take the time to stop, think, and thank God for the lists of good things, we realize how awesome God is. And do you want to know what is even better than remembering the good things in life? Remembering who gave them to us. God. Well, there is a book in the middle of the Bible called Psalms. So if you have a Bible, go ahead and open it to Psalms 16:8. While you're looking for that verse, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the guy who wrote a lot of this book. His name is David, and he had a pretty crazy life. He started out as a shepherd taking care of stinky sheep. Then he became a tiny soldier who defeated a giant with a small stone. Then he became the best friend of the king's son. And then that king decided he did not like David, and he spent a lot of time chasing David all over the country trying to hurt him. Yikes. Good news though, it didn't work out, and David ended up becoming the king himself. I mean, talk about a crazy life. It actually gets even more drama-filled, but you can ask your parents about the rest of his story another time. Even with all the good and the sad things that happened to him in his life, David says in Psalm 16:8, "I keep the Lord in my mind always. Because he is at my right hand, I will not be shaken." This means that David would also take time regularly to stop, think, and thank God for all the ways God had shown up for him during the scary or sad times, or for all the good things that God had done for him in his life. And you know what? We can do the same. As you celebrate and welcome in this new year, take time to stop, think, and thank God for things that he did throughout the last year. And as you start this new year, 2023, make it a habit to stop, think, and thank God. Would you say that with me now? Stop, think, and thank God. Now, say it to someone next to you so that they wake up. Stop, think, and thank God. Because when we do that, we remember that God's hand is with us, and we become a people who are strong and can't be shaken. I don't know about you, but that is the kind of person I want to be. Let's practice right now in prayer. Dear God, thank you for giving us so many good things in life and for being there for us during the not so good things. We love you and want to always have you in mind. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me, 168 Kids, and I can't wait to see you all next week. All right, now parents, this part is for you. On the next slide are some practical ways to practice stop, think, and thank God with your families. So what if you, 1, do this at the dinner table each night? You could keep a journal for your family members to write in throughout the week. You could write the things you are thankful for or the ways you see God in your life on small pieces of paper and put them into a jar. Then at the end of each month or even year, go back and read them together as a family. Or you could even come up with your own fun way to incorporate stop, think, and thank God, and let us know so we can encourage others to do the same. As a 168 family, we are here to encourage and support you as you help your kids to know and love God. May this new year bring more of that for all of us.
Hey, Liz, thank you so much for reminding us to stop, think, and thank God. As Liz said, I'm so grateful that we're here at Springbrook and for their ongoing generosity and partnership. I want to say Happy New Year and welcome to 168. My name is Carl Fisher and we are so excited that you have chosen to worship with us today. I am here with 3 quick ways that you can continue to invest in relationships right here at 168. First, small group communities will be starting again soon. And right now is the perfect time for you to sign up. Over the life of this church, small groups have been a great way to get to know other people, not only in the church community, but those in your neighborhood. I mean, just this past year, we've heard stories of how a group came around the family in prayer and encouragement during a tough season. We've seen groups come together and show up to help a family move into their home and business. We've seen groups love on, celebrate, and support families through child dedications and baby showers. If you've been considering joining a small group, I want to encourage you to connect and engage with the community in this way. Head over to 168cc.org/groups. Another opportunity for you to engage and invest in other people is through Church Home. This past fall, we launched Church Home as a different expression and rhythm of our faith community. If you missed it, we engage with one another through food, building a relationship, a kid lesson, prayer, and studying God's word together. If you've been waiting to invite a friend into a non-threatening spiritual environment, Church Home is that opportunity. Just so you know, as we start the new year, we'll be meeting in one location, so please be on the lookout in your emails for more information. Finally, mark your calendars for Sunday, January 29th. 168 will be holding its first ever baptism service. Here at 168, we believe that baptism is an external declaration of an internal change. So if you or your child is interested in being baptized, please email info@168cc.org. We want one note for you that a mandatory baptism class will be held before service on January 15th. Small groups, Church Home, and baptisms are all practical ways we help people pursue, participate, and proclaim Jesus to all people. And all of this is possible because of your generosity and giving. If you would like to continue or begin financially engaging with us in this mission, you can give one of two ways. First, you can head over to 168cc.org and click the Give button. Or you can mail a check to the address on the screen. At this time, I'm going to ask you to open your Bibles to Acts chapter 9, verse 36, and follow along as one of our team members, Carla Cabrera, reads today's passage for us.
At Joppa, there was a certain disciple named Tabitha, which is translated Dorcas. This woman was full of good works and charitable deeds, which she did. But it happened in those days that she became sick and died. When they had washed her, they laid her in an upper room. And since Lydda was near Joppa, and the disciples had heard that Peter was there, they sent 2 men to him, imploring him not to delay in coming to them. Then Peter arose and went with them. When he had come, they brought him to the upper room, and all the widows stood by him, weeping, showing the tunics and garments which Dorcas had made while she was with them. But Peter put them all out and knelt down and prayed. And turning to the body, he said, "Tabitha, arise." And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. Then he gave her his hand and lifted her up, and when he had called the saints and widows, he presented her alive. And it became known throughout all Joppa, and many believed on the Lord. So it was that he stayed many days in Joppa with Simon, a tanner.
Thank you so much, Carla, for that reading. It's so good to be with you all January 1st, 2023. I can't believe it's here. But I just wanted to start off by asking, are you starting New Year's resolutions this year? Maybe not, but I just want to get your brain going by sharing with you some throwback resolutions from the 70s and 80s. Listen to some of these. To beat my high score at Pac-Man at least once a month. Do you have that resolution? Number 2, to stay true to the Beverly Hills diet. I don't know what that is. Number 3, to wake up every Saturday super early to catch cartoons. No thanks, Netflix. Number 4, to get a disco ball for my room. And this is my personal favorite resolution, which I have personally done before, is to be quieter when I'm eavesdropping on my mom on the other landline. Now, as you continue to judge me and as I thought about your 2023, I asked, what will be the 4 commitments that you can live out from the life of Peter and Tabitha in Acts 9 that a year from now, when you look back on December 31st, 2023, that you can say, man, these 4 commitments really changed my year. So here are the 4 commitments that I suggest will not only change your life, but it will be for the good of your communities. So here's number 1. In 2023, I commit to the flourishing of my city. In verse 36, it tells us that Tabitha's other name is Dorcas. And because everything is cyclical, right? Fashion is cyclical. I wonder if you knew that in 1925, 44 newborns in the United States were named Dorcas. And maybe it's coming back. But the meaning of Tabitha and Dorcas is gazelle. It means to display loveliness, grace, and kindness. And Tabitha, in our text, displayed gazelle-like character through her commitment to the flourishing of her city. Take a look at verse 36. It says, Tabitha was always doing good. Where the word always in verse 36 is an active verb with no end date. Not just the short-term mission trips that you go on, and those are still good, but meaning good was an entire part of her life. And good means moral and physical goodness. Living a life of service without expecting, listen to this, anything in return. In verse 39, it shows us that Peter showed up and the widows were so overwhelmed by Tabitha's kindness that they showed him the robes and other clothing that she had made. Man, she was all in for the flourishing of her community. Hey, you know what I really missed the past 2 years during COVID? Free samples. Oh, you thought I was going to say relationships? I mean, I miss those too. But free samples, I really miss those. Now, just track with me for a minute. On December 18th, many of you guys joined 168 as we went out to Giant Steps autism community and the school, and you wrapped Christmas presents, you painted walls and doors to freshen up their space, you cleaned windows. But even beyond that, think about just the list of ways that you chose to participate. As a faith community, we engaged in the flourishing of our community by partnering with World Relief to build hygiene kits for refugees. We became good neighbors to a refugee family, visiting them multiple times a month and helping them acquire their driver's license. We built coffee tables for families who don't have them. We continue to support the work of the orphanage, hospice, and daycare in Mexico. We built dressers for those in transitional housing and so much more. But why? Why are we doing any of those things? Because, track with me, just as the tiki masala sample in the white ketchup cup at Costco is not meant to be consumed as a meal, but to lead you to buying what seems like a lifetime commitment to tiki masala in the freezer. So the building of the coffee tables, serving at Giant Steps is merely a sample, a gateway to what it looks like to be committed to the flourishing of your city with a lifetime commitment. Said another way, the normal rhythm of Participate Sunday is designed to be the first step towards what it looks like to be committed to the flourishing of your community. So, how would your commitment to the flourishing of your city change your 2023? Here's number 2. In 2023, I commit to bridge building. About a month ago, I listened to a TED Talk by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie called The Danger of a Single Story. She shares that when she was 4 years old, she was growing up in East Nigeria, reading all of these American and British books that were available to her. Now, growing up in Nigeria, she'd read about these children and she appreciated how it stirred her imagination, but she found that because these were all of the stories that she had access to, when she started to write her own stories, all of her characters were white. They always talked about how lovely it was that the sun had come out and how they loved to play in the snow. Now, obviously, as a 4-year-old living on the continent of Africa, snow is not the normal experience. And so she provides this really helpful quote. The single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. You know what I love about Acts 9 is that both Tabitha and Peter take steps to break the cycle of the single story. They become bridge builders. In other words, Tabitha and Peter make choices to befriend people of whom they have single story stereotypes to better understand the person. Where does that happen? Take a look at verse 39. The first is a widow. The Biblical Archaeological Society says this, that widowhood presents a difficult time in a woman's life, especially when compounded with a diminished ability to meet financial needs, a common circumstance in the ancient patriarchal world of the Bible. Meaning, during Peter's time, most people believed the incomplete singular story that widow equals that poor woman that their version of the soup kitchen should deal with. That was a singular story. What about the second one? Simon the tanner. Take a look in verse 43. You might be thinking, what is a tanner? A tanner is a leather maker. He would take animal hides to produce the leather. But how does Simon fall into the singular story stereotype? Because if you look at Leviticus chapter 11, it says, you will make yourself unclean by touching a dead animal. Which means, if you look at Acts chapter 10, verse 6, when it says that Simon's house was by the seaside, that meant that Simon was seen by his community as not a person to get to know on a personal level, but the storyline of Leviticus. He was the unclean and dirty, the lowest of the rung, the less than minimum wage worker who's probably just a brute. I cannot help but wonder if God is asking our community this year to get to know our version of Simon and the widow. For you, is it Jimmy the liberal? I'm just making up terms here. Is it Susan the Democrat? Is it Johnny the Republican? Is it Dan who identifies as LGBTQ+? Is it Kathy who is pro fill in the blank? Is it David who is an immigrant? Hey, even if you do not agree on everything, and by the way, can I just say this? I guarantee you that Tabitha and all the widows didn't agree on everything. I guarantee you that Peter and Simon didn't agree on everything. But isn't it true that they are modeling for us a commitment to the flourishing of their community, and that must include getting to know people beyond headlines or one single story that you've heard from some friend or a podcaster, a YouTuber, or a pastor, but by actually serving alongside your version of the widow and the tanner, by befriending your version of the widow and the tanner, by living your life with and alongside the widow and the tanner, and being able to call your version of Simon by their name because you know them. What if you committed yourself this year to getting to know fill in the blank? Latasha Morrison, who leads a bridge building movement, she says this: when you do not know someone, you fear them. When you don't know someone, you fear them. Number 2, in 2023, I commit to bridge building. Here's a third one. In 2023, I commit to friendships. Hey, maybe coming out of COVID, you lost a relational step. Maybe through the unprecedented time of COVID, you kind of went into isolation, you went into hiding, and you told yourself that just living by myself, living in isolation without friendships is easier, it's better, and it's what I want to do. But as you know, and even beyond the Bible, social science has confirmed again and again that even, and you've heard this before if you've been part of 168, even beyond air pollution, exercise, and quitting smoking, that genuine, true friendships that Tabitha and Peter cultivated in Joppa, and that God wants for you, decreases mortality risk and brings back how God intended for you to flourish in 2023. Take a look at verse 37. Someone cared enough for Tabitha to prepare her dead body. Look at verse 38. Tabitha was so deeply invested in friendship that the disciples in Lydda made over an 8-hour walk to Lydda to get the disciples, to get Peter to come and visit them. In verse 39, when Peter arrives, because Tabitha's friendship meant so much, the widows were what? Crying, literally weeping and wailing at her death. In verse 41, I just can't wonder how their eyes and their hearts must burst into relief as they hear the upstairs door open and they see Tabitha walking down those steps. What about you? Do you have friendships outside of your family that will weep with you, that will weep for you? Are you a deep friend like this to someone outside of your family? So practically, what if you committed to, in the year 2023, to the wise yes, where you, for example, say yes to participate Sundays and relationships in small groups, which kick off, and Pastor Carl will talk about that in just a little bit. Say yes to church home in January 22nd. And even say yes to making the first move and asking people out for coffee, taking that courageous step to put yourself out there. What if in 2023, you commit to friendships? How would your year change for you and your community's good? Hey, wherever you are, if you feel like you've taken a step back during COVID in relationship, we need you. I need you. We need your friendship and relationship to be who God calls us to be. All right, here's number 4. I commit to consistently taking my next step in faith. All right, so this is an iPhone. Actually, it's not. It's an Android. I just wanted to see if you were paying attention. But all of us intuitively know that Apple, one of the foremost groundbreaking technological companies in the world, is not an overnight success that happened to strike it large with minimal effort. Rather, starting not even in 2022, 2010, 2000, 1990, 1980, but they took their first official step to incorporate in 1976, 46 years ago. And then they took the step to be successful with Macintosh. Then seeing a decline in the 90s, they took the next step to restructure, and they found profitability in the 2000s with mobile devices, and then they took their next step to become the first company in the world to become $3 trillion. Apple, this is what I want you to hear, and its leadership took consistent, brave, and hard next steps over the course of 46 years to become who they are today. What's my point? When you and I read Acts 9 and you see the faith of Peter, you might say, wow, I could never have such a vibrant and courageous faith like him. I would never be able to do what he did in verse 40 and say, I'm going to close the door. Widows, you should leave, because I believe, and I have the courage to believe, that God is going to bring Tabitha back to life. You might say, I don't have that. How do I get that? Is it possible? Is it possible that just as Apple's success in 2022 is a result of their millions of next steps over the course of 46 years, that the courageous and vibrant faith that you and I desire in Acts chapter 9 this year in 2023 is not a result of spiritual overnight success, but comes as a result of the millions of faithful next steps Peter took before Acts 9. In Matthew chapter 4, Peter takes the first step of saying yes to Jesus. Maybe you need to do that today. Then after hanging out with Jesus in Matthew 16, he takes the next step to saying to Jesus, you are the Messiah. He makes that next step confession. Then he takes the next step to journey with Jesus, and he experiences Jesus' miracles. Then he takes the wrong step and he rebukes Jesus. Then he takes another wrong step and refuses to get his feet washed by Jesus. Then despite his failures, when he could have curled up into a ball and given up, he took the next step and restructured his priorities. Hey, did you know that on average you make about 35,000 decisions or steps each day? That means that Peter made another 1,000,000 steps as a human being between Matthew 4 to become the person he is in Acts chapter 9. Don't be discouraged believing that Peter's bold courage in Acts 9 and vibrant faith was an overnight prescription pill. Instead, recognize that they were a result of taking everyday next steps in faith, even in the midst of making poor decisions. And so here's a final question that I believe God is trying to ask you right now. In 2023, what would happen? What would happen if you stopped worrying about that grand spiritual miracle and instead committed to taking your next step in faith? Maybe it's saying yes to Jesus. Maybe it's saying yes to baptism, and Pastor Carl's going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Maybe it's saying yes to joining or sticking through with a small group. Maybe it's saying yes to a structured Bible reading plan. Maybe it's saying yes to other spiritual practices. Maybe it's saying yes to friendship and relationship. Number 4, I commit to consistently taking my next step in faith. Hey, I'm so grateful to be with you this first day of the new year. And I can't wait to hear about what commitments you are making in 2023, next week and beyond. But for right now, would you just take this next step that Pastor Carl is about to provide? I hope to see you next week.
Thank you, Pastor John, for sharing with us 4 commitments we can make in 2023. After hearing your message, I personally want to take this year to commit to bettering myself and building bridges. What about you? As John said, to help you take your next step, would you go to the link below this video? On this link, you will find 4 practical resources and next steps for the 4 commitments we talked about. What might God do through you if you took 5 minutes to write down some goals and put them somewhere you will see them regularly? Hey, as John said, we can't wait to hear about your next steps next week at our regular service time and location. As always, you have 168 hours. Go live every single one for Jesus.